Good. I'll just move that box out of the way. So just to kind of recap on what Jan said, this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to change it and take some bits of it and put it into a training video that is going to be released with VERT 3.2 and specifically look at the CBCT module. So I want to just say again, thank you to everybody who's turned up and given their time to be at this webinar. We've got people from all over, so Canada, the States, the UK, all across Europe as well, so loads of people turned out, so thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule, whether you're in the morning or in the afternoon. It's very much appreciated. And I just want to welcome everyone to the webinar. So as Jan did say, we are looking at the CBCT module. This is going to be a huge factor in the 3.2 release of VERT, something we've been working very hard on, and I wanted to introduce that to you all in this webinar. There's quite a lot of functionality that goes into it, so everything that you see here, if you get 3.2 when that's released, then you will be able to recreate everything that you see in this webinar. And as I said, as Jan said as well, if you have any questions, feel free to jot those down in the chat box as we're going along. There'll be an opportunity after the webinar's finished, after the demonstration's finished, for you to ask questions. And like I say, if you have any pressing, urgent questions that you want to ask while we're going through the demo, then feel free to jump in and ask those. Jan will be moderating, so those should be answered pretty promptly as well. So the kind of format of this presentation is that I'm going to give you a bit of a background about where we've come from with the CBCT module, how we've got to where we are today, kind of a bit of a breakdown of the kind of timescales, the timeline. Obviously, I'm going to give you a full demonstration of how the CBCT module works. And it's going to, I think we did one this morning, it took roughly around 45 minutes, so that includes a little bit of time for questions at the end. So a bit of a kind of overview of the timeline. So we have a few steps prior to actually building and developing the actual software. So we started a little while back now with the first step, which was to put together a specification document for the CBCT module. So we had a first draft that we put together in-house. This was then sent out to a focus group of sites. Those you can actually see here at the top, so I want to say thank you in particular to Aarhus, Addenbrooke's, Castle Hill, Clatterbridge, in Holland, Leeds, Norfolk and Norwich Pool, Tungwar College, Taunton and UWE, University of West England, each helping in their own way to build the specification document and make the CBCT module what it is today. So once we had that specification document, and you can probably see at the top here, we had 6 separate revisions of that. So it took a while to put together. We then started with the next step, which was the collection of information. So this was taking the software engineers, the development team to our sites. We had 4 separate site visits. This is also known as a kind of knowledge transfer to kind of educate the development team on how the CBCT works and how it should look and the feel of how our module should be. We do have an absolutely sterling software development team here, but obviously don't have that radiotherapy background, so this was quite an important step for us to be able to let them understand the process of the CBCT and how that works. So once we had that, once we'd kind of undergone that, and also with that knowledge transfer, there was some training internally too. So once we had that, we had the next phase, which was to break down the specification document into coding tasks, development tasks, and kind of bite-sized chunks so we could start to build the software. We then obtained some CBCT data, and these are 5 separate CBCT plans, which I'll touch on when we actually go through to the product demonstration. And then finally, after all of that, that's when we actually got to the development and testing stage. So we are on the very latest release of the software at the moment for this webinar. We're in the final stages of testing, and we're going to look to release this CBCT module with 3.2. So as we are at the moment, this is what you'll see with the final release of 3.2. So I'm just going to move in, close that down. So this is 3.2. It'll look very similar to the versions of VERT that you're using currently. There's a couple of things I wanted to point out on here before loading up the CBCT plans. Just wanted to show you how you would actually access those plans in 3.2. So if you go to File, Modules and CBCT, you'll notice that the CBCT is new for those of you that use VERT a lot. We have the pediatrics and patients models, the physics, if you have the physics module, but there'll be a fourth option in VERT 3.2, and this will come as a separate installer that you run when you install the software.
Maybe.
So then you'll see the 5 CBCT plans. So you have the bladder, uterus, lung, parotid, and prostate. So I'm going to be working with the prostate plan today, but you'll be able to use either of those plans as you work through. So to save the kind of loading the plan in, because we're over the internet and it can take a little bit of time, I've already preloaded it. So I've just gone to File, Modules, CBCT and Prostate and brought in the CBCT prostate plan. So one of the reasons that we wanted to embed these plans is that they actually come with 4 days worth of CBCT data. So A, it means it's quicker to load it in, and B, it means you can flick instantly between the 4 daily sets of images. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So like we said, we're working with the prostate plan today. So here we can see the prostate plan loaded in, patient on the bed, and we can see that the patient is all aligned, as we'd expect to see. There's a couple of prerequisites with this CBCT module. Of course, it only works with the treatment machines that have the KV imaging arms. So this would be the Varian TrueBeam iX, the Synergy Agility, and the Versa HD. If you are trying to use a plan that doesn't have the KV image arms, or if you're trying to use a data set that isn't CBCT, you will notice that the CBCT match interface option here is grayed out. So once we've done all that, once we've brought through the plan we want to work with, we can then go to View and CBCT match interface. Now before I click that, I want to talk to you about how to input an error to this patient. So there's a couple of ways that you can actually introduce an error. So you can go the traditional route by going to Setup Error and manually inputting an error there. So I can introduce a vertical error or a longitudinal error, and then that error that I've created there will then be shown in the CBCT match module. Alternatively, you can go to File and Preferences, and at the very bottom there's now one that says Auto Setup Error for CBCT. And what this does is when you actually progress into the CBCT acquisition screen, it will randomly put on an error in all directions. So you don't have to think about adding an error before you use the module, it will automatically do that. There's a couple of pros and cons for this. So you have a random error, which you'd probably expect to see in the clinic. Or if you're wanting to use it as an assessment tool, then what you can do, you can manually put the error in here, and then this way you can assess the competence of the setup. So the competence of the match, I should say. So for the purpose of this demo, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the auto setup error ticked. So this is going to introduce a random error when we move through to the next phase. So if I go to View CBCT Matching Interface, we're now brought up with the acquisition screen. So this is actually a pop-out window, and this will be visible in the main VERT projection window. You can actually see, still behind, we have the patient. And if we just actually go back in, you can now see that because I've pressed that View CBCT Match Interface, we now have the error shown on the patient and the KV imaging arms have been deployed. Just going to move back into the acquisition window. So there's this kind of split into 3 main areas. We've got the top left, which is the scan parameters, where you can choose your acquisition mode. So this would be your full scan and your half scan. With this being a prostate, I'm going to choose the full scan. Here you can start and you can stop your acquisition. We also have the treatment room camera. So this is just a kind of live CCTV camera view of what you would see if I was to minimize the acquisition window. And then this black window here, this is going to populate with the live image as we move around the patient. So I'm just going to start that. So I actually have some sound in my ear. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear that, but you can trust me when I say that when you use this on your own device, you'll be able to hear that sound. So I'm just going to stop that there and just go back to the half scan. Now, just to kind of illustrate a point here, one of the things that we were asked for by one of our sites is that if we start a half scan, we can see now the position of the KV imaging arm is actually going underneath the patient, and that's to avoid any entry dose when we're using the half scan with a head and neck patient. So that actually starts at a gantry angle of 22, and the full scan starts here with a gantry angle of 180 extended and does that full 360 loop around the patient. Okay. So I can wait for that to complete, I can stop, or alternatively, you don't actually need to complete an acquisition scan, it's just a kind of simulation, and then you can move on to the next phase of the CBCT match by pressing next in the bottom right hand side here. So again, this is still in the pop-out window, so we can see the VERT screen behind. And now we are into the matching module. So this will look quite familiar for those of you that do the CBCT matching regularly. It's split into the three main windows. So we have our transverse, sagittal and coronal, and we can alter and change between those with this button on the top. So we have the main menu ribbon on the top here, our main view in the center, and then our machine values and shift values at the bottom. So there's a couple of different ways you can adjust the view. So like I said before, this one with the kind of switching views arrows, we can actually change between our transverse, sagittal and coronal within the main window. Here we can press the maximize button, similar to what you would do on a normal Windows format. So here we can have the transverse or just the sagittal, the coronal. We can change and alter our window leveling and grayscale. So again, we have the CBCT on the left, CT on the right. And this is really nice, something that was added. We have the histogram on the grayscale here, which you can see in the light blue, black and grey. And also we can right click and we have our presets available. So our window leveling presets, which we've taken from the Realistic Machine 2, so we can actually have our pelvis preset, bone, and then again we can adjust and scale that how we like. So very similar to what you would do and the process that you would make on the actual CBCT online screen. We have at the bottom here our range slider, so we can shift from 100% CBCT to 100% CT, and this will always default to 50-50 in the middle. You'll notice also we've got the CT dotted lines, so you can actually use these dotted lines to scroll up and down your CT slices, depending on which axes you're on, if you're on your Y, Z, or Z for American users, or X axis. And also with the CTs, if you click on a window, you can use the middle thumb wheel of the mouse. You won't be able to see that, but that's what I'm doing right now, is just using the middle thumb wheel just to scroll through the CT slices. So Up on the top left, we'll have a little run through of the menu ribbon. So the first icon here is the tree view. If we select that, that opens up the contours, our CT, and our daily CBCTs. So like I said before, we have 4 sets of CBCT data, and as this is now embedded into the software, we can easily switch and change between the 4 daily images. We have just the one reference CT, and then up here we have all of our contours that have come through from the planning system, and then we can select these and show these. So this is again something that's new to the software, being able to load multiple DICOM sets, so as in the CBCT, and also the ability to show the contours on the sagittal and the coronal. So something again that we've had to work with to be able to make this work and function for the CBCT module. Just to remove that tree, just to click the button again, and then that will sink into the left-hand side. The zoom in and zoom out is fairly straightforward. Just a left click with the mouse will mean that you can zoom in and zoom out. We have the pan function, so where you can pan the camera, and then once you select the pan, instead of the mouse, the kind of arrow, you'll actually see a kind of hand there, and that will enable you to drag and move both the CBCT and the CT together, both on the transverse, sagittal, coronal. So once you're happy with your view and you're happy and you're ready to start your match, then you can start with your matching tools. So these are all of your matching tools at the top. Starting from the right hand side, we have the auto match. There's still some adjustments that we need to make with the auto match. It's one of the newest features that we've added in ready for this webinar. So one of the things that you can do with this is that you can select your translational errors, so you can work out if there's a lateral, long, or vertical error. And what this will do is that when the error is put in, the auto match will then move back in the direction of where the errors come from. So it won't be a perfect match. It will still leave some error and some error for you to match, to work with. And this is the same with the pitch roll and rotation. You can actually select that and do a pitch roll rotational error. So you can start, and then you can also reset. So we can see we get our values here. We don't have the ability to have a 6-degree of freedom couch at the moment, so of course we'd need to reset that and then work again with just our translational errors. Once we've done our auto match, we can select the manual match. And you'll notice now, once the manual match is selected, we have the dotted circle around the plan. So we can see selecting outside of the dotted circle here enables us to change the pitch, roll, and rotation of the patient. Again, I can reset that. Selecting inside will allow us to move on a vertical, longitudinal, and lateral. And again, selecting that manual match will show us our slider bar so we can switch between the two. We can use now our matching tools. So once we're in the manual match, we can use our 3 matching tools. We've got 4 matching tools. The first one by default is the crossfade overlay. So that will automatically come up and be the first tool that you can use. So essentially with that, it's just the 2 images overlaid, and then you have the range slider here which you can scroll up and down. The second one is the checkerboard. So here we have our checkerboard, and we can change the dimensions of each of the quadrant and the size of those by selecting and moving around. So again, really nice for looking at your borders. And in the top left and bottom right we have the CBCT, and on the top right and bottom left we have the CT. Moving on, we have the moving window. Again, this is adjustable, so we can make it as small or big. Again, just checking your borders here, making sure that everything is in your margin. And then finally we have the color blend. So activating the color blend will color in the CBCT in blue and the CT in your orange gold color. And then when we go back to the center, you'll be able to see anything that directly overlays in white, and then your kind of blue and orange faded as well. And these work with the matching tools. So again, the checkerboard, the moving window, and then the overlay. So there we have the contour tree, the zoom in, the zoom out. We have the pan function. We have the crossfade overlay, which is the default tool, and then you can change from that to the checkerboard. We have the spyglass function, color blend, and we can switch those views from the transverse in the main window and change it to the coronal or the sagittal if we like. Of course, we have the manual matching, and then we can do the auto match as well. So you see, you can really follow the same pathway what you would do within the online matching process. You can do your auto match, you can do that with a pitch roll and rotation if you like. You can then do your manual match. You can talk about having the patient in the correct position, and then talk about your soft tissue into the correct target volumes. Moving down to our values, here on the machine values, you can actually see the target, the actual, and then your shift. So the actual is going to be where we're going to go once we've created that shift. And we can select and deselect where we want to move. So you can talk about your tolerances, your shift tolerances, what parameters you would move, which parameters you wouldn't move. And then based on my training, I would keep the vertical and introduce a +6 vertical move. Once you're happy, you can hit apply shift. And this is quite a nice feature as well. You actually have the approval dialog box where you can enter your initials. So again, if you're teaching safety, or if you're wanting to look at how to treat safely, this is quite a nice way to be able to talk about that. If you hit OK, it will automatically minimize the matching interface. It's still available to load back up. And then you're greeted with the ready to perform shift dialog box here. So again, it tells you the shift that you're going to be performing, the target position, so you can cross-check that once you've made the move. And this is a nice feature as well. Once you've hit apply shift, you'll be able to see the couch move. There you go. And then you can see that you're in the correct position. You've done your match, patient's set up, you've shifted to make sure that the soft tissue is in the correct parameters and within the target volume, and then you can go ahead and you can treat your patient. If you want, you can also go back to the matching module, and then you can re-perform that shift, or you can re-perform that match. And once you close this down, you will have to then redo the match and put in a different error. Click on our beam and treat the patient. So you can see it does everything that you'd want it to do. You can manually put the error in, you can have an automatic error, complete with your acquisition, and then you can do your auto match, your manual match, and use your matching tools in order to match your patient and show that you're in the right place. There was A lot of things that I just wanted to point out. First of all, I wanted to kind of thank the development team for all the work that's gone into this. It's been a huge project for us here at Virtual, getting this online, and the amount of work that's gone into it has been quite incredible, really. There's been a few kind of barriers that have delayed this slightly. Obviously, the knowledge transfer with the development team, and they've got a whole new, brand new DICOM loader. The way that the patients are now loaded, the DICOM's loaded into VERT is completely different to VERT 3.1, and that took a good chunk of time to develop. So yeah, I hope you like it as much as I do, and I hope you are getting some ideas of how you can use it and take it forward. And if you have any questions, then Jan and myself would be more than happy to help answer those. What I'm going to do is just bring up the chat box, and if there are any questions, feel free to jot them in there. I noticed that there's a few already in there, so I'll be able to answer those. So I'm just going to scroll back up to the top. Okay, so first one. Can we match the CBCT scans taken throughout treatment to the scan taken on the VERT system? Yeah, so my colleague Jan's just answered that. So yeah, so that's the question about being able to import your own CBCT data sets. Currently, it's not possible. We are working on that, and we are going to make some slight changes to it. Like I mentioned before, we've got a whole new DICOM loader, and there was obviously some tweaks and some changes that need to be done to be able to allow people to bring in their own CBCT data. Currently, with this release, to avoid any further delay, we're going to work with just the 5 plans that we have. I think looking at them, because they've got 4 sets of images, daily images for the 5 plans, I mean that's 20 days worth of CBCT data. I think there's a lot there to kind of get your head around and to work with, and it's all different areas of the body as well. So I think hopefully that'll be useful moving forward, and then certainly for the next release we'll be looking at introducing own CBCT data import. Okay, CBCT scan generation is shown to illustrate the workflow. Okay, just moving down from that one, can you save matched images to check later on? It's a good question and something we did discuss internally here. That's from Simon and James at Stoke. So one of the things we did think about was being able to save the matches, or to save the position or the place that you're going to be moving to, the actual shift, I should say. We thought that we did discuss it, and we thought we were going to have something in place for that. But again, to avoid any hold-ups, we thought it was just as easy just to kind of record those values for this first version, and then maybe look at having a saved match feature again in the next release. So again, I'll put that to the development team. I think the actual process of it is quite easy. It's just the kind of logistics of working out where that would be saved to and how it would be saved, which is more of the trickier part. Just from Asma, is there a clip box feature? I'm not sure what that means. If it's referring maybe to a region of interest feature with the auto match, we don't currently have that. Again, it's a good question, and we're looking at maybe implementing that. The way that the auto match actually works, it just kind of because it doesn't have an actual matching algorithm built into the software like VERT and Electa do. What it does, it just kind of corrects slightly for the random error that's created. So in a way, the region of interest box wouldn't have too much say on that correction. Of course, it'd be nice to visualize it, but we don't have that in this feature currently. Yeah, so can you compare the random error against the match result? Yeah, so when you introduce the random error, it does actually show up in the setup error here. So when you go to the setup error, it will show you the random error that it's introduced in millimeters. So this will be a 0.7 and if you remember, I did a 0.6 move. So I think that kind of shows you as well that you can use it. If you wanted it more as a kind of set match, then what you could do, you could write down your own, introduce those, maybe even create a virtual presenter with setup errors, and then you could do it that way as an assessment tool. Yeah. From Birgit, so wondering when the update will be ready for downloading. Again, we're in the final stages of testing. We're looking to send that out to some beta test sites, and in fact we actually have done that to a couple of centres. They're in the process of testing the software. There's quite a lot of new features in the software, and of course as good as that is, it can also have the added disadvantage that it may introduce some kind of bugs that we don't realise. So especially with this release, we've done some really thorough in-depth testing. So we're going to be looking at a release date of the end of October, and we'll be rolling out 3.2 to everyone who's in support around that time. Yeah. Will the 2D match look the same, or will you be able to evaluate 2D films in the CBCT module? So I'm guessing, Carl, is that are you talking about there the IGRT 2D match that we currently have in VERT? Yeah, it's a good question, and I know that a lot of the tools that we have in this 3D would be really nice to have in the 2D match. It's something that we have been in discussion about, and I think, yeah, it's something now that we have this in VERT, we could possibly move across into the 2D match. Carl, are you there? Can you hear me? Maybe.
Oh,
No?
yes. Sorry, I didn't know you
It's okay.
unmuted me. My
It's okay.
apologies. Yes, that's what we're referring to. Just
Yeah.
the features of the window leveling and being able to adjust and match the same way that you matched the CBCT.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? So I think a lot of efforts have gone really into this 3D matching tool. But I suppose now that these are built into the software and we have the coding for that done, then it definitely something that we can look to move across to the 2D match tool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely, it's a good suggestion, and I'll put it through to the development team. Kim, is there a measurement tool to get distances in centimetres? There's not actually, and it's something I've not thought of, and I think it'd be something that'd be quite useful. Again, I'll make a note of it. If it's something that might be easy to implement for this, then we can certainly look at it. If not, definitely we can make some suggestions for the next release. Just while we're on that point, just wanted to make clear that obviously there's a lot of work gone into this, but we always want feedback and any kind of if you use the software, if you use it, and let us know any kind of pros and cons, or if it works for you or what doesn't work. Any kind of feedback like that is really, really useful in developing the software, and that's kind of the approach we take with all of our future software releases. So if you have any thoughts or suggestions, any feedback, anything you've seen today, or when you get your hands on the software and you start using the module, then we're always more than happy to hear some improvements or how we can alter it slightly going forward. Yeah, that's a good question actually. Yeah, I mean, not some. I think we've discussed it, haven't we, Jan? The ability to have an anonymizer invert, so people can just bring through their own plans. I don't know whereabouts we are with that, but yeah, it's something we have discussed previously. I'd say not for this version release. But yeah. Yeah, I thought I'd just mention that. Sorry, it's okay. I was going to say we don't actually have a measurement tool, but it is a good idea, and I'll feed that through.
Finished.
Hello, Simon. Hi, James. How are you?
Oh, yeah. Ah, you alright?
I'm good. Are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. Any thoughts or questions or anything you wanted to add, just to further to what you've seen?
No, I think it's quite impressive. Yeah. It's good as we're looking at it as more as a teaching tool, as I think most people will be, for newly qualified staff, really. Which is why we were asking the questions about our own cone beams that we do on a daily, if they could be imported, which I think is coming in the next version. But certainly from a newly qualified radiologist point of view, I think it's a useful tool to have, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope so.
Yeah, but no, I think we asked a lot of questions on the chat, really, so I don't think there's anything from us. I was trying to think of something, but no, it's quite impressed, really. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, good. Well, it's nice to hear the Stoke accent anyway on the line, so that's good.
Yeah.
I'm just unmuting everyone, so if anyone has got a question they'd like to ask that they haven't typed into the chat, please feel free to ask Tom now. Any final questions?
Good for me.
I think that's a no.
Brilliant.
No.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks for joining, everyone. So as Tom explained earlier, and I explained, there'll be a recording sent by email. If you have any ideas for future webinars that you'd like Virtual to host, then also get in touch. And in the meantime, just want to wish you a very nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye now.